Okay, guys, so it's being recorded from now on. And welcome, everyone. That's another amazing webinar within the framework of the weekly fasting group. It's a very big international group. We operate on WhatsApp, and the aim of this group is to cultivate the habit of fasting for at least 24 hours every week. And the key word here is consistency. So we actually fast week after week after week. And that's a great habit to cultivate. We have lots of members from virtually every point, every corner of the earth. And some people do it for health reasons, some people do it for spiritual reasons and for discipline reasons. And we don't have an agenda in this group. We have vegans, we have raw foodists, we have meat eaters. So no agenda at all. We're just here to learn from each other and to learn about different healing modalities and to be open to the new ideas. And that's so the uniting factor is these 24 hours of weekly fasting. If you're watching this video later on, and if this kind of line of thought or ideas is interesting for you, then you are welcome to contact me. You will find my phone number and my WhatsApp number below this video. You have to send a WhatsApp message with your name. And my name is Arik. I am the moderator of this group, and I will happily add you. And guys, and today we really have a pleasure of having Justin Carpenter, and Karen gave lots of recommendations for you, Justin, after watching, lots of your videos and interviews, and like, looks like you are an independent thinker. You're a great healer with lots of knowledge about different healing modalities. So Karen, over to you, and hopefully we'll have a nice time together.
Okay, thank you, Arik. Lovely.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So I'll introduce Justin to the group. He's basically been a non-stop truth seeker. He more recently did a soul-searching nomadic journey across the US with his dog, which fascinates me. So I'm interested to learn more about that. And that basically bonded him on a much deeper level and a deep connection with God. And he has changed his diet, and he fasts. And I've learned a lot about Justin on Heart Warriors and Man Speaks. And with that, I'm going to bring Justin on so that he can obviously give everybody a much better explanation. So a warm welcome to you, Justin.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's an honor to be here. It's always a pleasure hearing and seeing other people who are embarking upon this journey, which is to just reclaim our health, reclaim this aspect of ourselves. And it's so important to acknowledge this responsibility of this body, this vessel, because this is truly our connection point. This is what connects us to this physical realm. And when it's not activated on all levels, then we have discrepancies with accessing our higher self, or this metaphysical space that we're all connected to as well. So this body acts as a sort of a connection point. And so the more that we can focus on these healthful aspects, it certainly does help accelerate that. So that's really been, my passion is just continuing to stimulate that connection with all that is more than what we see here and what we experience within this physical realm. Because it really is so magical when you start to uncover just the potential behind what it is that we're doing here, and what is this experience that we're having. So you mentioned my sort of nomadic journey through that was in 2020, and so it was amidst the whole world falling apart, falling into fear, amidst all sorts of other different things. And I was off on my own with my dog, just camping in some of the most beautiful remote places in the US. And it really was through that experience that I was able to find that stillness and that peace, and truly connect with our earth around us. And that's arguably the first space that we all have to get to in order to start this process. We have to start in the physical realm, we have to start at the base, and you can look at this from a chakra level as well, but connecting to Mother Earth in that sort of sense is what allows that connection to start to be stimulated. So that's what inspired me to really find myself and just realize that, like, why do we do all these things that we do? You know, why do we spend so much time and effort on things that we don't really care for, you know, on things that we don't really, you know, have any desire to do, but we just do it just because it's a pattern that's been observed, or because organized society tells us that's the way it has to be. And so having that opportunity to really step aside and start to question all of these things amidst the world falling apart into fear, it really did help provide that clarity for me to start seeing things, you know, for the first time, and have that inspiration to start speaking out against it. So while I was separate from everyone as far as in a physical space, I did start to speak out in those moments of just, you know, proclaiming, you know, this or that, as far as the realization about what was going on. And we don't have to live in fear. You know, the fear is introduced by people who want to keep us stimulated into that fearful space. And why do they want to keep us in that space? Well, it's for control. And so if we can recognize these desires to control us, then we can start to put the pieces back together to reclaim our sovereignty, reclaim our sense of independence, reclaiming our health is such an important part of that. Like that's arguably the first step that we need to take in order to do that, you know, because if we're not in a healthy state, if we're continually dependent on a system that's designed to wear us down and designed to kill us slowly over time, because when you start to look at it honestly, that's the fundamental reasons behind why everything goes on within this space. It's designed to make us obedient slaves, you know, obedient, complacent slaves that live for a short amount of time, work for a short amount of time, and then die while being harvested just about every step of the way. So coming into that realization helped me find my voice. And, you know, if anyone, I'm sure many of you here have stepped out onto this, you know, even just going into the food space and speaking out against anything in that regard, even just saying I'm going to fast, you know, everyone realizes that when you say that to somebody, they look at you like you're crazy. Like, what do you mean you're going to go without eating food? Like, how are you going to spend your time? You're going to die. And so just addressing these sort of discrepancies from other people, it does sort of define who's really with you and who's just likes the idea of the relationship with you, you know, who actually cares for you as you are and is willing to change as you change, not necessarily has to change in the same direction, but just acknowledge that we are changing beings, and this is part of this process. And then you distinguish between those who will fight that tooth and nail and ridicule and you know, cast you aside and all other sorts of things. So going through that process was really helpful in refining me to be who I am today, because I realized that, you know, while connections with others are beautiful to have, it's not necessary. And when I let go of that attachment of having a necessity of having relationship, then that's what allowed my relationship with God to flourish. That's what allowed this space to be found within, to where I could build that foundation on not needing anybody else. Not that I don't care to have a relationship with anybody else, but it's that needing, you know, that neediness that we can get into, this attachment that we get into that keeps us confined, because then we start to build our reality based on how somebody else thinks of me. And as soon as I'm building my reality based on how somebody else thinks of me, well, then I'm trapped, you know, then I'm imprisoned, you know, then I'm bound to their thoughts and their perceptions and their opinions. And that's a very limiting space to be, you know, and ultimately having this realization brings us back to this point of like, well, why are we here? Like, what are we doing here? What is it? What is this whole experience for? And when you start to peel away all the layers, it's like, well, there's not really a whole lot of structure as far as what we're supposed to do, but it seems to be everything's designed to stimulate us to be the best versions of ourselves, to be the highest creative beings that we could possibly be, so that we can add to this collective experience in the only ways that we can, you know, the only ways that you, in your unique ways of bringing things to the table, that you can find that. So as we let go of the sort of addictions that we might have and the attachments we might have from that old system, food being a huge one to really let go of, then you start to find yourself more free to be and pursue in those kind of ways. So that's what kind of led me onto the space. And that was 2020. So 2021, I got involved with who some of you might be familiar with, and really came on to the online space in a much more powerful way. And it, it's really encouraging, because I just get to show up and learn with everybody else. I don't pretend to be an expert. I don't pretend to know anything. I mean, I know some things, but I'm not here to tell somebody what to do. I'm not here to tell somebody how to live their life. I'm just here to share my experience. And if that interests people, then I'm willing to engage with that, and we can all live together. And so it's just created this wonderfully harmonious structure where, most of the talks that I do, a lot of times are just on my Telegram channel or wherever else. And just like this, where we can have an open forum, it does allow these questions to be asked and the conversation to be had, and this dialogue to go back and forth. So there's not just one figure up at the front of the room or on stage or whatever that's telling everybody else what to do. This is a co-creative community aspect. And I think it's so vitally important that we shift back to this space, because then this is recognizing all of us as sovereign, independent, responsible individuals, but we can commingle and co-create together and communicate in these beautiful ways. And then the potential becomes unlimited. We grow in just an accelerated rate. We can all grow together. So yeah, so that really is a kind of summary on who I am and what drives me. And I like to say that the main objective of a society that wants to keep us divided is all about disconnection. So everything is designed to disconnect us from ourselves, disconnect us from each other, and disconnect us from God or source, or it doesn't really matter what you call it. It's just the totality of all, the highest perspective of all of us. And so anytime that we can stimulate connection with ourselves, with each other, or with what is greater than just ourselves, then that's the greatest act of rebellion. So having these moments of stillness and silence through fasting, I think, is such an incredible way to introduce that level of peace and that connection within. Because when you're fasting, you have nowhere else to turn. You have nowhere else to look to except for, okay, I've got to deal with my own shit. I've got to deal with my own stuff when it comes up, and I don't have anybody else to blame. I don't have anything else to numb out. So anyway, that's me in a nutshell, and I really appreciate you having me on.
Lovely. Well, I'm really glad to have you here. So obviously all of us are fasting, or most of us will be fasting now, and we started at 12 o'clock lunchtime today, and we go until 12 o'clock minimum. The minimum time is, and it's like, as Arik said, we can sometimes, some people are dry fasting, some people are living on juices, some people just liquids, and some people are just fruit, or it's just a day of not doing the norm. So I have a question. So when did you actually change your diet? And what inspired you to change your diet?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's been a process throughout my later life. I mean, I definitely was, for the majority of my life. I'm 32 right now, so I'd say for the first 28, 29 years, it was pretty much a standard everything diet, eating all sorts of junk and crap and whatever I could find and whatever was put in front of me. And so that started to shift in my 29, 30 or so, where I just started to be more conscious about what it was that I was eating, and starting to limit certain things. I recognized that processed foods were not good for us, and just all these chemicals that are added to everything really are not conducive to our health whatsoever. So I started to remove those, but it really wasn't until I was introduced to Charlie Freak's work in 2020, and he really had some light bulbs go off within me of just recognizing that the animal products that we're eating, and all the processed foods, and even cooked foods to some degree, are are limiting us. They're holding us back from this space of highest potential. Our body has to go through extra toil and struggle in order to process these things. I didn't really want to recognize that at first, but the more that I looked into it, and the more that I started to realize that, okay, this guy's right about this kind of stuff, and I need to take ownership in this process. I need to take responsibility of what I'm doing, because it marries so perfectly with this higher purpose of what we're here to do. And we're not here just to eat. We're not here just to have our desires fulfilled, by these temporary sensations. And that's really all it comes down to, is like, is this 5, 10, 30-minute, meal, this sensation that I'm getting, where it might taste really good in that moment, is this worth an hour, a day, a week, a month, a year of feeling like crap? Is this really worth having that experience to where that weighs into everything else that I'm doing? Am I here just to have these little quick hits of sensations, or am I here for so much more? And so when I came to that space of like, no, I want to have more out of this experience. I don't want to just be focused on these short-term pleasures, and I want to go for the distance. I want to feel good in every single moment, so that I can be the best version of myself. And so it was really, I'd say it was the end of 2021. No, the end of 2020, where I also was introduced to another guy named Josh X, who's a prolific entrepreneur, or just pioneer in the space of health. He's been healing people through eliminating cooked foods and animal products and things of that nature for a long time, and he has healed a lot of people through fasting and fruit juice and things of that nature. So he was doing a fruit juice cleanse, like a 21-day juice feast from December 1st to December 21st, and then followed by a 3-day water fast. And this was going to be with a big group. So this to me was just like, okay, here's my sign. Here's what I need to get involved with. Here's what I need to do. So I quit cold turkey just about everything. I was still drinking alcohol at the time, not a lot, but I still was, and I was still eating some cooked foods and still eating animal products and things of that nature. But I cut it all in that moment, and I jumped headfirst into this experience, and then haven't really looked back, since then. It was a powerful just realization of just how good you can feel when you're not eating much at all, and when all that you are eating are these higher vibrational, easier to digest foods, which the fruit is the easiest form of fuel for our body to assimilate, because our body's always looking for glucose. That's the only thing that it really wants out of the food. It's looking for minerals as the building blocks, and then the glucose as the fuel. And so if that's all we provide it, is this easy to assimilate foods, then it has more time to address and heal so much more. So fasting really is the fastest way to health and to healing. So that really kicked it off. And so ever since then, it has been, it's fluctuated at times. I've had moments where I've eaten more cooked food since then, and I've had moments where I've abstained from that. And I think there's a balance to be found with the level and space that we're healing, and where we are within the process. And I might have been a little too ambitious with jumping into that extent, because I attempted to stay raw for about 6 months. And it was fine to a degree, but then I felt a decline in some ways, and I know that I could have pushed through it, but I didn't really want to have those periods of extreme weight, like I went through extreme weight loss for a time. And so I pulled back just a little bit, and introduced cooked foods again. And now I'm kind of back on this process of weaning off of the cooked foods as often, and going towards more of this 100% raw space, because I really do feel the best on it. There's something to say about the clarity received when you do have these spaces of just cleanliness within the body. And I know many people who have gone on extended fast will say that through the times in fasting, once you're kind of over that initial hump of being able to do it for a longer sustained time, when your body's really hydrated, hydration is really so important. then you feel so much better, so much clearer when you're in that space and you can have that recognition. So yeah, that's been my journey up to now. I'd say now I'm consistently, my days are pretty much, I'll drink a bunch of water in the rising, and then I'd have about 2 liters of I've been doing mandarin juice recently, so I'll do mandarin juice for the first half of the day, and then I might have a more dense meal, usually just a salad, usually just a big old chopped salad, and sometimes I'll introduce like some cooked quinoa or chickpeas or something like that, if I want to feel that sort of dense satiation, and then followed by some more water. So I've been really enjoying finding the balance in that space, staying there and just seeing where it takes me, and then yeah, periodic fasting as well. I think fasting every Sabbath is such a wonderful practice to do, because this is really when our body does want to be in that space of stillness. So when we can have a regular practice of just maintaining some sort of slowdown, like I like how you said that, in whatever way you feel comfortable with, just acknowledging a slowing down of the pace on this particular day is such a helpful reminder for us to stay in that space of balance, and then we can take it wherever we want to from that point on. So yeah, that's where I'm at now.
Oh. So did you experience any major detox situations by going cold turkey?
Oh yeah, absolutely. The candida die-off is pretty intense. It can be these little parasites and things that live inside of us. They don't really like it when we stop feeding them what they want. So if we do it too quickly, it is good to brace ourselves for the impacts. I had pretty bad mouth ulcers. I felt like flu-like symptoms for a bit, really nauseous. And this was, I'd say this was probably in the juice fast. This was around about a week into it, up until about day 10. I felt pretty awful. But once I got over that hump, it was much more manageable for a time. And then as you go and you kind of start detoxing deeper layers of yourself, you start to uncover all of this sort of lymphatic waste that's been accumulated and lays stagnant in different parts of our body, and what that does when we start to eat these sort of more detoxing foods, or even just have periods of not eating, our body starts to move it about and try to get rid of it. But that's why I love Dr. Morse's teachings, because he's always about the pathways of elimination and making sure that you've got your, you can eliminate through your bowels, you can eliminate through your kidneys and your urine, and you can eliminate through your skin. These are 3 huge areas that, if they're clogged up anyway, if they're not functioning as they need to, then what happens when we start to detox is it just shifts from one area of the body where your body was comfortable dealing with it there. It kind of had it contained, it had it in a space where it knew what to do with it. And then it shifts it to another area of your body, and this can introduce other problems. So it's really important to really strategically go about it. And everyone's kind of different as far as what areas they struggle with, and what areas need to be focused on. But just having this holistic understanding of how our body functions and what needs to happen in order to get to these spaces of balance is really helpful in identifying that. So it continued happening. I had moments where I had like pus coming out of my hands and my face because of eliminating in those kind of ways. I had my hair fell out, not all of it, but I had a good chunk of my hair fall out for a bit. And like I mentioned, the extreme weight loss as well. And I know these are, and it might sound kind of daunting to people coming into this space and not having gone through something like this. But when we do recognize that we've been poisoning our bodies for our whole lives, until we start to recognize and take responsibility for our health, all of those toxic layers are still there. We have so much toxicity accumulated within our body that it takes some time to get rid of. And there are ways that you can accelerate these processes, and fasting, I think, is the most powerful way to do it. And it's free. It doesn't cost anybody anything. That's the best way to eliminate stuff. But as we go through this process, it will show up in a wide variety of ways. And this often deters people from going forward. They get stuck up on some detox symptom or another, and they say, oh, this, fasting's killing me. This is the problem, or the fruit's the problem, or whatever the case may be. And this is just, in part due to an ignorance of what actually is happening within the body when we're going through these kind of things. So it's a sort of, just given the circumstances of where we are, it's almost like a natural initiation into kind of a higher order. This is like a natural order of how God structures this creation. And when we've chosen to ignore these natural laws of how everything is structured and how our body needs to be and operate within these foods, then it takes a level of commitment to break out of that. I think as we progress and as people recognize the importance of paying attention to health, it'll be a lot easier for everyone to stay in that space of balance, because all of society will be moving into that space. So it'll be much easier to do that at that point. But here and now, as we're just being pioneers into this space, we know that this isn't a common thing for people to do and use fasting as a tool for health. So it becomes a lot harder to do. And so this just sets up this sort of natural refining point where anyone who does come into this space, they need to have this level of commitment to say, this isn't going to be easy. There's nothing easy about doing this right now, but it does help to inspire those of us who are ready to be leaders in this space and ready to step up to the plate and say, hey, I'm ready to do this. I don't care how challenging it is. It's worth it to me. It's worth it to me to have that. So yeah, that's kind of my thoughts there.
Cool. So what about your family and friends? How did they feel as you disappeared before them with your new eating habits?
Well, my family's they're wonderful. They are wonderful people, but of course it was a challenge for them to see me, lose a whole bunch of weight and go into all these sort of extreme practices. And they'd been used to having, sharing meals together and having moments where, and just shifting away from that and saying, no, I'll bring my own food, or no, I'm good. I'm just going to sit and enjoy y'all's company while we eat, or while y'all eat. And just having that I know it was a challenge, and it always presents a challenge for people to sort of disconnect from that way of being and how people respond to it. But having grace and compassion in those moments too was really helpful for me to stay and always be mindful of the bridge, always never losing that connection point completely. And really that happens just by communication. As long as we're communicating effectively, saying what it is that we want to be doing, this is where I feel like I need to go, this is where I feel my best. And I know it might seem scary, but I'm okay. Like, everything's all right. You don't have to worry about me. And just having that continued, just line of communication open is really what helps to sort of keep that contention from growing into any more conflict than it needs to. Inevitably there will be some who can't handle anyone breaking apart from the way that things used to be, or the way that they want to have everything go. And so those people, you just kind of have to say, well, you don't own me, so you can't control me. I would love to maintain a relationship with you, but if this is the way that you're going to treat me, then I'm sorry, this is just going to have to be a separation point. So it's different for everybody, and it happens differently in different regards, but just standing strong and building that resilience, I think, is a huge part of this process as well. It introduces this potential, and how we respond to it really helps us grow as a person. Or I know it did for me, because it allowed me to really find that strength within and find that resolve to say, okay, I'm not building my reality based on how you think this is. You can think whatever you want to. I wouldn't dream of coming into your space and telling you what to do. So don't come into my space and tell me what to do either. So just having that clear boundary was always helpful to define as well.
Yeah, I think it's all an initiation. It all is. It's like the food, the mind. And like you say, it is where is your I say priority, but what is it that you want? And like you say, what more can anyone want than their connection with God? It's like there's no decision, is there? So anyway, so I'm actually going to ask, we generally do like 20 minutes, half an hour with you and me having a conversation, and then open it up so that people that are behind the scenes can have their questions. So I'm going to open it up now. So if anybody would like to talk to Justin, please let me know. Is it quiet? Right. Okay, so we can go on. Is anybody there? Arik, are you there?
It looks like Alva raised her hand. I'm not sure if she has a question.
Okay, yeah, I saw Alva had
Yes,
a question.
I do.
Also, Ravi,
Yeah.
I think Ravi wants to ask a question, right?
Awesome.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Hi, Justin. How are you?
I'm doing wonderfully. How about yourself?
Good, good, good. See, I have one situation I want to talk to you about.
Okay.
I can fast for any number of days. I don't have a problem. I don't have the cravings or withdrawal symptoms or anything like that. But what happens is, at home when I'm sitting, my wife brings all kinds of stuff into the pantry. As soon as I see something in the pantry, for example, this morning, I took a banana. Though it's not a bad food, but I took a banana. And next to it, there was a M&M candy. So I saw that and I took it. But when I go to stores, I don't buy it. I don't crave for it. I don't have withdrawal, not to have chocolate, anything like that. So how do you characterize my behavior? And do you have any tips how I can avoid this kind of behavior, bad behavior?
Well, I wouldn't classify it as bad behavior. We get into this space of judging ourselves in these experiences, and that can create more problems as well. Because when we have this sort of like forbidden fruit, aspect, this creates more of a temptation for us to lean into it. So what I like to say is always honor the experience for what it is, but truly see it for fully what it is. When we often get into this habit of just blindly moving about and eating different things just because we see it and just because we want it.
Correct.
But if I get into this space of like, well, I am going to have this experience, I am going to eat this thing, and then I'm going to truly see and feel what it does to me, then you start to really recognize, okay, what happens when I eat this particular thing? How do I feel after that? Where are the what happens in how I'm feeling? And if there's not a definitive, aspect that says like, hey, I don't want to have this experience anymore, then it's not as powerful. But oftentimes when we eat these kind of foods, you do start to notice an effect from it. You do start to notice a degradation in the ways that we operate, in the ways that I'm feeling, and you might introduce some digestive trouble or whatever else. And that's why fasting is such a powerful tool, because it allows you to clean your slate. And then when you do introduce things, you can truly, genuinely feel what this is doing to my body. And so then it becomes a point of just like, well, do I want to have this experience? Is this experience worth having this temporary pleasure, or do I want to abstain from that? And there's no right or wrong in that. The choice is yours to have that experience and to go through that thing. And if we need to, then I'd argue that, yeah, you need to have that experience, and that's okay, because that experience is just one more adding to that collective experience that you're having to eventually get to that space where it's like, it's not worth it. It's not worth it to have that for me. But if we get into this habit of cutting ourselves off too early, and being really hard on ourselves, then that's not a sustainable approach. It eventually gets to this space where we fight that and we cave, and at any moment of weakness, we'll go. Yeah. So just being as gentle on yourself, I think is the best way to approach that. And, it is hard. It is hard when you share a home with somebody who's introducing and buying these kind of foods. And, so just maybe continuing to have that conversation with her and say, hey, like, can we maybe store this food somewhere else? Like, can we put it somewhere that
I don't see.
Yeah. And not just to find some compromise, find some balance within that. So like, I get that you want to have this, but like, hey, can we put it in a drawer somewhere, or can we put it in a cabinet where I don't see it? That can be your space where your food is that you want to have, and then this can be our food, where we share the space and whatever else. But it could look differently. You don't want to encroach upon her freedoms as well, because she's free to move about in her space and have that moment as well. So we don't want to be too imposing, but just introducing that conversation is often a wonderful way to create that bridge and continue that conversation, and just have her be more open to the challenges that you might be going through when you see those sorts of things. Then that allows that sort of vulnerability to be shared, and ultimately that helps to build that relationship into a much better space, because she might be not even aware of what you're going through. She might not even be aware of the challenges that it presents to you, or whatever else. And so just opening that conversation really allows her to find that compassion within herself as well, to either make a decision one way or another, but at least the clarity is there. Clarity is so important within relationships and how we operate within a shared space. And so it certainly does introduce a lot of challenges when we are in that space. I know for me, it's so much easier. I went from, I live in Mexico right now. I'm down in central Mexico, just south of Mexico City, and it's a wonderful space to be in. And the fruit here is absolutely incredible. And so it does have this, it makes it a lot easier to stay pure in what I am eating. And I don't buy the other stuff that would tempt me otherwise. But I have had periods in my life where I've been either staying at my parents' house or living amongst other people, and that was much more difficult. And so I feel your challenge within that, that reaching for that bag of potato chips or whatever else, when it's just right there in front of you. It's a hard temptation to resist at times. So I think it does just come back to not being too hard on yourself for those experiences, recognizing what it does. So like when I ate the potato chips, my eyes would swell up from all the salt, and the oil I would feel that oiliness on my skin. My dandruff would start to come back. So these were just experiences that I could truly pick up on and notice, okay, this is what happens when I start to eat these saltier, greasier things. And it's not worth it after a time, and so even if it's there, I'm like, man, okay, no, it's not worth it. Even just having like one is like, you can't do that, because then you want to have more. And so,
Exactly.
yeah, so that would be kind of some tips there.
Do you mind have one more question? I'm a born vegan, but once in 2 days I do eat cooked food, like a bean or green beans, and with little oil. With very little oil I use. I used to use cooked food. Now you said about raw food, right? So what happens when we cook something? Let's say we cook a cabbage or bean. What happens? Does it make our body to spend more energy digesting the cooked food versus the raw food, or what is the idea behind the going raw?
Yeah, well, it kind of depends on what food it is that we're looking at. I think that if we're eating certain things like beans, for example, that would hurt us if we try to eat those raw. They're not designed for us to be eaten in that state.
Yeah.
We have to introduce some sort of cooking in order to make it even palatable, which kind of, begs the question of like, well, was this food really intended for us to be eaten in the first place? Because ultimately the highest connection point is everything that our Mother Earth provides us in its natural form. And so anytime we start to step away from that space, then we're introducing, this is the hands of man. And anytime we introduce more processing, you start to take away from the natural life-giving elements that plant was designed to give us in that space. So a lot of things that we don't really have a way to quantify scientifically, although they can in some instances, they call them like phytonutrients and things of that nature. But this is essentially captured sunlight. We don't really recognize just how powerful the sun is and how meaningful it is for everything that we do. And so when we start to introduce cooking, it does start to take away from these very sensitive aspects of sunlight captured within these foods. So with certain things, I think like cabbage, for example, I think it's very difficult to digest in its raw form. I think this makes it a lot harder on the body to actually process and go through. So if I were to eat cabbage, I think having it in either fermented or in a cooked form is going to be a better state to process on the body than if I were to eat that in its raw form. Which again begs the question, is cabbage really something that's ideal for me to eat? And so then when you start to ask these kind of questions, then it really refines down to the space of like, well, the food that is made for us is in perfect form is this fruit. It is this, it's perfect in every way. It's the easiest to digest. It's the easiest to gather. It's appealing to us in its natural raw form. So these are just continued signs of this is our natural food. God created this whole creation for us to not toil and have to spend time cooking and preparing things and cleaning dishes and all these other sorts of things. He gave us these beautiful fruit trees so that we could just go out and graze and eat the fruit and then go about our day, not be spending a lot of time worrying about what it is that I'm going to eat. So much of our societal structure is based on this mealtime and meal prep and everything involving around that, which takes us away from these creative efforts of what we can be doing. So just really, and it's not a, I'm not saying that because I still, there's still things that I do cook. And I think that, as we transition towards that space, that there are definitely tools that are helpful. But just recognizing these sort of simplistic ways that this creation is built helps to move into that space of simplicity. And that's really the way that God intended, was the truth is very simple. And we like to complicate things because we love all of our complicated spices and flavors and all that other kind of stuff. But when you step away from those for a minute and you start to appreciate the foods for what it's doing and not just being eating for the sensations, then it becomes easier to see those for what they are. And so, yeah, that would be my answer there.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Jason. Thank you so much. That's very insightful.
You're so welcome.
Thank you.
You're so welcome.
I have a question. If anybody else is not going, I'll go.
Let's have Alva, as she asked a question earlier,
Okay.
and then you, Laurie.
Thank you.
Thank
Alva,
you,
are you
Justin.
there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
You addressed one of my questions would have been about craving. So thank you so much for that. How did you work on your mindset? I've been on and off this path, and it is getting easier some moments and not others. But I feel like not just the cravings are a obstacle. Maybe that's the best word I want to say. Getting my mind to like to get on board. So I'm just looking for tips to there.
Yeah, great question. And it is something that, it's the process and it can take time to really refine this mindset and get away from these, these temptations and what they bring us to. But as I mentioned, it's not for us to beat ourselves up because of it. It's just to honor the process and honor what it is doing for us. But I think the most helpful thing for me is just having that firm foundation built upon like, why do I want to improve my health? Why do I want to have a greater physical health? And if it's just for weight loss, or if it's just for looking good, or if it's just for even just feeling good, that's still just, it's still too much into that physical space. And when we stay there and that's our only reason, then it's only going to take us so far, and so just having that full on holistic understanding about this physical health being a part of this holistic health, which is about refining my connection with all, refining my connection with everything around me. This kind of helps provide a platform for me to stay consistent. And it's not that I don't falter and fall back and, go into different sorts of things, because that happens. And this is, a part of the process that we honor as well. But coming back into that space of like, well, why am I here? I'm not here to just eat things. I'm not here to just have these temporary pleasure times. I'm here for so much more. And So while it doesn't address every situation all the time, having that true that true goal, that true orientation within everything helps to establish that more often than not, so that when I am in those times where I'm reaching for something and I am like, oh man, I really want this right now, then I can come back to that space. Is like, do I really want this though? Like, who's the one that's doing the wanting right now? Is this me, or is this my parasites? And so this is also a sort of helpful reminder as well, as just truly seeing and recognizing the fact that all of these temptations away from things that are actually serving our body, they're totally driven by these parasites, and then these habits that have been formed by these parasites. And so when I can see that, and also continue to instill this, I have a pretty rebellious nature in general, just as I've described. I don't go along with the status quo. So when I recognize that these parasites are just another representation of this cabal of influence, this sort of inverted society of taking us away from our inherent connection, the parasites are just another aspect of that. And so that really helps to drive me as well. It's like, no, I'm not going to give into that kind of stuff. I don't want to be controlled anymore. I don't want to just go where I'm led to by these little bugs and whatever. That helps to instill that as well. But it is a process. It's not something that I've mastered. I still have my moments of weakness and going back and forth. But as I continue to go further and deeper within this journey, the feelings of connection, I mean, there's nothing better than that. So when you start to have these moments and you start to recognize that everything is here to provide me with the greatest potential. So even these moments of temptation are still there as opportunities for me to overcome, so that I can ultimately be my highest self. So I can even see those moments as like, a level in a video game. It's like this point that when I overcome that, then I've gotten to a next level. I've gotten to a next stage, and I've gained in that sort of connection point, so that I can be the best version of myself. And it's like, why did God make these challenges like this? Why did God make a donut so tantalizing and appealing? Why is it there as a temptation for me? Why is it so hard? And it's like, well, what game do we want to play that's easy? We don't like playing games that are too easy. We don't like playing, when you get a puzzle and you solve the 10-piece puzzle as a kid, you don't want to go do that puzzle again. You want to move on to the more challenging one. You want to move on to something that's more difficult and more stimulating in that sort of way. And ultimately, that's what we're doing here. Is there is no such thing as death as an end. There's no end. We are infinite energy. We're infinite beings that have been here through the totality of time. And so we're having this experience as a collective continuation of this progressional game that we're playing. And so this is arguably the hardest we've ever played it before. This is the hardest it's ever been for us. And with that difficulty comes a greater reward, because when you look back and say, oh man, I overcome all those challenges. I had all these temptations thrown at me. I had all these things, trying to pull me back into these lower realms of experience, and I overcame those. What greater feeling of achievement is there than that? And so this just helps to provide that frame of reference, so that in these moments I can see it from a different perspective, and not be so bound by my limited sort of egotistical viewpoint in that moment of wanting to fulfill these little desires. Life is not about desires. Life is about overcoming the desires, so that we can ultimately go towards the highest viewpoint, which is God's will, which is our highest will. It's always leading us to this space of maximum potential, so that we can be the best versions of ourselves, adding to this creative effort that we're all contributing to, so that collectively we grow and rise to the highest point that we could possibly imagine, and keep going. There's no limit to it. So that's what makes it so wonderful. There's no limit to the amount of learning and what we can do within this space. So just overcoming these challenges helps to give that fortitude and that strength, so that every moment we can continue rising, knowing that the challenges will be there always. There will always be temptations. There will always be these moments where we have and the pitfalls can look different at every level. So it's always something to be mindful of, but just truly celebrating the journey for what it is, honoring that everything is happening for me. Nothing is happening to me. There's no such thing as victimhood. There's no such thing as whereas I'm bound to an experience. Everything is happening for me in order to rise above that challenge, so that I can be a better version of myself. And having that sort of that understanding of how this creation is set up helps me to view those opportunities as for what they are, an opportunity to grow and to rise.
Thank you so much. That was beautiful. You answered every single part of it. I'm not doing it for vanity reasons. It is the toxemia health condition as a result of toxemia. So thank you so much. Really appreciate you.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Great question.
Cool. Is Laurie there?
Oh, hi. Yeah. First
Okay.
of all, I want to thank you so much. I was late. I can't wait to hear the rerun recording. So I didn't even hear your whole thing, but Alva, hi Alva. I think like Alva for many years, I've been trying to go just even raw diet. And then now I learned about breatharianism, which I'm really, interested in as well. But I guess, I don't know if you kind of answered it, but basically the challenges I have is just more challenges that so many challenges in my life. Like I don't sleep, and the thing with the food has been my biggest challenge in the world. And for over 40 years, I've been trying to go raw. And I didn't hear what you said, but I know all about natural hygiene, and I know all about what to do, and I keep not doing it. And it's such a struggle. Like I keep saying, I don't want it to be this much of a struggle. It shouldn't be such a struggle. I fasted for 40 days on water, and probably like 3 to 5 days later, I had pizza. Like, it just the cravings I have. And since I was a little kid, I felt like if I don't eat this, I want to die, kind of thing. Like if I can't eat this now, I want to die. So even though my life is fine, it's not like horrible. I'm not, most thing I'm unhappy about is the food, that I keep using food for some reason to feel good, because it's such a habit of 40 years, because I had, major food disorder when I was young, Billy. And I still can't seem to do it. Like I do it a day. Now I have a few days of raw, but actually not 100%, but almost. And every day it's a struggle to say, like, I don't want, a scone, but I want like fruit. Every day I feel like having, even there's some days that I have a lot of pain in my body, and that makes me want to eat more if I have a migraine or if I have other pain. And at this point, I have so much toxicity, like I think Alva was saying, that, it's, my question is, I think I need to move to a place where there's no food in the house, because my husband has, yesterday he made potatoes and green beans. And of course I thought, that's not the worst thing in the world compared to what I normally eat. Billy, come. And sorry, I'm with somebody else here. I'm trying to move away so I could talk, but I just, I don't know why it's so hard. You were saying that we have to have challenges, but it's super, super hard for me to stay on the raw food diet. And then I thought, well, eating nothing is almost easier than eating. So I thought, when I did some breatharian retreats, and I really loved it, because once I wasn't eating, I felt like who I truly am. I felt like this is who I am. Without the food, I feel like a spiritual light being. I feel, besides the horrible detox that I go through when I do it, but otherwise I could feel the difference. Like that's who I'm supposed to be. And I don't know, I can't get there. And it's a long time already that I've been trying and going to different retreats and doing so well on the retreats. And then I come home, and then the stress of work and family or whatever, just the dogs and all these things. it just constantly go back to the food. And I think it's like the hardest drug to get off of, more than they say cocaine or even heroin, to get off of the sugar. Because when I eat, I want all the worst things to eat. I don't want just steamed broccoli, you know. So I don't know if you have anything to say about that, but I'm still trying. That's the only thing I could say, is like, I haven't given up. And I was happy to have this call today, because my sister just stopped for coffee and whatever else she's having. And I wasn't planning on having any, and I didn't, but it's always the temptation, like you say, is always there. And I know some people don't get tempted. Some people just feel so good on the fruit and they feel fine and they love it. But I have a hard time with fruits. It's not always the best fruit. So when it's not optimal fruit, then I don't feel like eating it. It has to be like the most optimal fruit. And I feel like maybe I should move to the tropics or something. Anyway, I don't want to take more time, but
That's a fantastic question, and I'm happy to go into that. So, um, what kind of came to me as you were speaking is just really be mindful of the language that you use when you talk about yourself, and the language that you use when you approach some of these things. Because I heard a lot of I can't, and I'm trying, and I know that it's hard. Like we all know that it's hard, but when our words are spells, and they're spells that we
Right.
cast on ourselves. And so just really be mindful of this space, and always focusing on what you're not doing. And if you can really reframe that into what you are doing, you're embarking upon this journey, you're in a call with these wonderful people who is doing these kind of things. You're doing incredibly, compared to most others, like, who haven't even begun to even entertain the idea that food is an issue and what creates all of our other issues. You're there, so you at least have that awareness, and that space of being within that. So oftentimes when we celebrate the things that we're doing, it helps to take away from the sort of weight of what it is that we feel we're not doing. And naturally, those things will fall away in time. But just helping to sort of be kind to yourself, be gentle with yourself. Like, you're doing wonderfully. And I would say, God's always leading us differently, different people in different ways, always, and so I wouldn't dream of trying to say exactly where he's leading you in these moments, and what these experiences are inspiring you to do. But you mentioned one of potentially moving. That could be something that this is inviting you to change your environment, change your space of where you are, and finding ways to make that happen. But it could also be inviting you to change your focus on what it is that you're paying attention to right now. And maybe it's not as much on the physical food. Maybe your focus needs to be more on breathing and finding that space of service within those around you, truly honoring people. And I'm not saying that you're not. I don't know exactly how you spend your time, but if you could find more ways to just to just be of service, to just find some way to give back and to spend time and energy into others, you might find.
I want to just tell you, thank you. I do agree with that 100%. The only problem is, though, I'm so sick most of the time because of eating these foods, like migraines and no sleep, and I don't have energy to do more that I want to do more to help people. I'm always about that, but I can't seem to do that with already whatever's on my plate now. I can't do more, like, that's the thing
Yeah. So
that I
again,
struggle.
yeah, it's hard, and there's nothing taken away from the challenge that presents. And you mentioned there are some people who seem to be much easier acclimated to shifting and transitioning, and it's no problem, and others who struggle quite a bit more. And I think that we all have different compositions, and we all have different things that we're learning through this life experience. You can look at past life karmas and things of that nature that kind of are areas that other you might thrive in certain areas of your life, but you might struggle in others, whereas someone else might thrive in those areas and struggle in the areas where you thrive. And so this always presents itself in different ways. So I'd say just continue to be in, as much as it might be difficult in those moments, but continue to be in gratitude for the experiences that you're having. You know, continue to stay in that space of like, okay, I'm doing my best here. I am genuinely doing my best. Do I want to feel this way? No, I don't want to feel this way. Well, what are some subtle, simple steps that I can shift within how I'm eating? Because it might be that you're jumping too much into extremes. That can be a problem as well, is when we are always using the extreme points to try and negate anything else instead of just taking those subtle shifts within our life. So if you can find, you know, oftentimes just finding an area of food that you can cut off completely and be comfortable within that, you know, and start small if you need to. So a lot of times, some people, you know, they'll have a hard time with gluten and that those breads and those kind of things. So that might be an area where you could cut out and say, I don't like how I feel when I'm that. So I'm, no matter what, I'm going to cut that out. And if I feel these temptations creeping in, then I need to have some sort of safe landing pad to jump to, you know, something else that's not going to be as damaging to me, to where I can still satisfy those cravings, but not be as damaging as say going to like a pizza or something like that. Or if I'm gonna have pizza, like then make a healthier version of crust, a cauliflower crust or something to that extent, where I'm not jumping as deep into those temptations that I know are gonna damage me. So that might be an area that you can look at, and you know, I don't know what areas you might want to cut off, but just some examples that are, you know, powerful to do so. Or you can look at cutting out, you know, excessively cooked oils. That's a huge one that really limit us and really cause a lot of problems within us. You can look at cutting out the gluten, as I mentioned, or cutting out animal products is another big one. So finding whatever space within that you're willing to cut out, but have a backup plan for when you do find those moments of weakness. This is the safe landing pad that I'm going to jump to, that's not dipping all the way into those areas that I do want to be very hard and very firm on. And then just doing that progressively over time, you know, not trying to cut out all at once, not trying to go into, you know, you mentioned breatharian. That's a beautiful thing to have in the back of our mind as a space to get to, but it can also be very damaging to spend too much time conceptualizing about these things when we're not ready. You know, if we try and skip steps, then we do go into these extreme concepts, and then this gets us in trouble, you know, as you're experiencing. So that would be a huge suggestion, is just finding whatever it is, one step at a time. You know, just say, hey, for this week, I want to cut out this thing, you know, and I no matter what, I'm not going to go to it. And when I do feel like I need to go to that, here's my backup plan. Here's my safer landing pad of something that I can eat that's going to satisfy those kinds of things without dipping all the way into it. You know, and you can find so many replacement meal items to sort of go along with that. You know, I know some people go very much into Dr. Sebi's alkaline electric way of being. There's so many recipes out there that fulfill his requirements, and going into these areas that are going to be much better in cooked food areas than dipping all the way into the realm of everything. Or you can look into, you know, the raw vegan lifestyle. There's so many recipes out there that people will use to where they're replacing, and you're still getting those same sort of sensations, but without the repercussions. You know, I'm sure many of y'all have tried, but if anyone has never tried banana and ice cream, you know, that's one of the most incredible, like delicious, just decadent desserts I've ever tasted in my life, like of everything. And this is just frozen bananas blended up in a high speed blender until it's just such a perfect creaminess. And there's really nothing better. I'm excited for having, you know, when we can have ice cream stands where the soft serve is that instead of ice cream. You know, like imagine that the kids would still
I know
love
we
it.
wanted to open up a place with the raw cinnamon buns and the banana
Yeah.
ice. You know, we always think of having my husband was talking about opening a cafe, like a vegan cafe that he could make those type of things. And that would be so great if they had that at every corner instead of Starbucks, right?
Yeah, and we're moving that direction. Like the space that we're moving towards and what we're moving through, that's going to be so much easier as we move forward. So don't try and, like, don't beat yourself up over the experiences that you're having. Like,
Well, I'm ready. I've done all that stuff. Like I'm not in a rush, but it's been over 40 years. And I've tried all those things, going slow, trying this, cutting out that, everything. It just always ends up that I want, the most damaging stuff that is what fulfills me. Like I said, the other stuff doesn't. So anyway, I know to keep trying. It's been so difficult.
yeah, and as much as breathing sounds, it might not sound, it's like it's often reiterated often, but it's so incredibly important. So I've recently been starting to practice Jin Shinjitsu, which is a practice of breathing combined with placing your hands in different areas. And this allows these channels to be unlocked. You're basically using your hands as an electrical circuit, and then inviting the breath in each breath to clear the areas of blockage between those two circuits. And so this has been an incredible practice, and I just did a show recently on it with the man who introduced the idea, and you can find it on my website, justincarpenter.org, and the show is called Healing with the Life Force. I've been doing these practices every day since that show, and it is incredible. Like, it is just such a wonderful thing to do. I go out and lay in the sun, and I just spend 30 minutes or so just breathing with my hands in different locations. And even if the I think the connections are absolutely doing something as far as clearing things, but just having that time of intentional breathing and finding that peace and that stillness is such a powerful point in my day. Because then we start to you mentioned breatharianism, like we start to really recalibrate how we find nourishment and recognize that we all have access to this unlimited energy that God provides. Like, God is this perpetual force that we all have access to, and all we have to do is invite it. All we have to do is accept it and bring it into us. So that might be something that can help address just where you find nourishment and where you find these areas of stillness and balance within those spaces. So that might be something you could look into. But just honor your experience. Like, don't it's already hard enough. You don't need to be hard on yourself. You're doing wonderfully. You're having these conversations. You're in a space like this, and just trust that you'll go where you need to go. And if that does inspire you to move, then that's great. I think getting into a space where we have more access to good fruit and able to be in a space where it's warm, and it just helps to cut away from all these temptations. Ultimately, we're supposed to get out of Babylon. Babylon exists. Babylon is any sort of city structure. It exists in order to inspire us to get out of it, so that we go connect with Mother Earth, who provides everything for us.
Perfect. Okay, I'm going to
Thank you.
You're so welcome.
Okay, so I'm going to head over to a couple of questions that have been put into the chat during the course of the week. One of them I sent over to you, which was, I'm going to just read it out for the benefit of the group. Whenever I cross 20 hours soft, dry fast, my physical stiffness due to atheroscoliosis, I think that is, in the arteries of lower limbs and mental problems, anxiety, neurosis rises very abruptly many hours after the fast. So is that clear? Whenever I cross 20 hours soft dry fast, my physical stiffness due to atheroscoliosis in the arteries of lower limbs and mental problems, anxiety, neurosis rises very abruptly. Many hours after the fast, I have to face nausea and vomiting with excessive stiffness in my legs and feet. Is there any raw food detox diet which has has very gentle and smooth detox with minimum bearable pain to the body and mind during the healing crisis. If you have any suggestions, please guide me.
Yeah, great question. And I would say, and even from my experience too, when I've gone through periods of dry fasting, I think dry fasting is a very advanced practice. I think that we need to be at such a level of hydration and in a detox state in order to really go into these spaces effectively. Because what it does, I mean, it's incredible what it's doing to the body. So don't view those experiences as if they're bad, you know, and because we get into these, it's uncomfortable, and I wouldn't necessarily want to go through that kind of experience on a regular basis. But you have her having, or whomever having that experience is not a bad thing. It means that your body's processing these emotions. It's processing some things that it needs to get rid of. But it can also introduce some trouble if we're not fully hydrated before we go into these states. So sometimes the dry fasting, if our body's not hydrated, it can kind of go into shock and start to kind of freak out because we're not providing that hydration that it needs. So I would recommend, instead of dry fasting, you know, look at water fasting if you do want to fast. And then she asked or whomever asked for a more gentle approach of detox, and this would really be going on a fruit cleanse, you know, just eating fruit as your primary source of fuel, juice if you want to, or just eating fruit is perfectly fine. This kind of way is going to be much gentler. You're still going to experience some detox at different times, but it will be much gentler on your body. You won't experience that sort of intense moments and different things. And then if you find yourself in a space of really, you know, you feel like you're really hydrated, then you can look into introducing some dry fasting here and there as well. But just don't be afraid to pump the brakes when we start to experience detox symptoms that are that severe, because, you know, life is not about feeling bad, you know. So even as we're healing, we don't want to be feeling too badly to take away from the experience of what we're here to do, you know. So like, I'll always be finding that balance within these spaces. Sometimes it is better to just go cold turkey and do a longer fast, you know, once we have experienced a certain space of hydration. I think a longer fast can be really beneficial. But oftentimes you need to go through and have a few weeks of 100% fruit so that you can find that hydration before you even go into a water fast. Because even just by drinking water, we're not really hydrating our body through drinking water in that form. We're just flushing. So water is a really good flush. It's really good at it's the universal solvent, so it helps to detox us really well, but it's not hydrating us. The hydration comes from the water-rich foods, because this is the slower moving water structure that moves through our body, and our body's actually able to pull on it and hydrate us on a cellular level. So prior to that, most everybody's problems come from toxicity and dehydration. So these two areas contribute to hyperacidity within the body, and this hyperacidity leads to all diseases that they label. You know, there's no such thing as disease. It's just as different symptoms of the same problem. So addressing the hydration is really, really important to do in order to so I would kind of forgo the dry fasting for now until you feel more comfortable moving into that space, and just look for gentler forms of going 100% fruit, or water fasting as a means to do that. And a great sort of protocol to get into a longer water fast is go 2 weeks on 100% fruit. Make sure your body's super hydrated, and then you can experiment with seeing how long you can go with the water fast, and take it slow at first. Try and go for 3 days, and then if you want to go for longer, then just keep it going. But as soon as you start to feel too uncomfortable with it, then don't be afraid to pull back and try it again another time. You know, it's different for everybody. We all process and eliminate things differently at different times. But it's important to be gentle with ourselves and just listen to our body too. You know, our body is such an intelligent aspect of us, and it's always trying to tell us things. It's always trying to indicate stuff to us. you do kind of have to be aware of the holistic or like the grand scope of the problems or the feelings that we're having and how they are resulting from parasites dying off and things of that nature, which can result in other detox symptoms that aren't necessarily the body crying out to say, hey, stop this. But it's important to also listen to the body clearly too, and not be afraid to pump the brakes when we need to, and also don't compare ourselves too much to everybody else too. This is a problem that we get into a lot of times where we're comparing ourselves to somebody else's journey and how they come off and how they are being. And anytime we do this, it starts to introduce this disconnection point where we start to be hard on ourselves for not experiencing something a certain way, or expecting things to happen a certain way just because somebody else had it. And anytime that happens, it always introduces more problems than not. So just let go of the comparisons, let go of the desire to have it go any certain way, and just be open to how it is. Honor and cherish your journey for how it's going. And as long as you maintain that commitment to it, then we're always going to be led to that space of maximum potential. That's the space where God is leading us at all times. It never changes in that too. So just truly trusting that process, trusting what we're going through, always helps us to go in that area. So that would be my response to that.
Perfect. And then the other question that we had is, living in cities, how can we move ahead on this lifestyle? Air and water quality and surroundings don't change. Is there anything else that we can do to help?
Sure, there are things you can do, but ultimately remember that the inspirations are there to kind of get you to move out of the cities. I know that's not always feasible for people to do at any point in time. And I've been there. I've been in a city and been limited by what I had available to me and things of that nature. I'd say for water quality, get a good water distiller is a wonderful way to ensure that you've got pure water access to at all times. A lot of people will buy bottled water and things of that nature, and even spring water is kind of hit or miss. Some spring sources are wonderful, some spring sources are full of sort of non-bioavailable minerals that can cause more harm than good. So unless you really know the spring and you know what you're getting into, distilled is kind of a safer, more generic bet, to just kind of ensure that the water is pure, ensure the water is doing what it needs to, which is to be that solvent and be that flush. So you can find a good water distiller, countertop one, for around $200 US dollars, and sometimes more, sometimes less if you can find a good deal. But those are really valuable tools to have, because then you can take whatever quality of water you've got and it boils off the water and creates a nice pure water that you can drink. And so that just creates a good source to have that as you go. For things like showers and other aspects, you can look into getting carbon filtration systems, or if you have enough money to spend on the whole house filtration system, to just purify that water, either via reverse osmosis or whatever else. Those systems can be expensive. So again, these are all just things to kind of encourage us to get out of the city so that we don't have these problems. But I get it. Some people don't have that as a feasibility in the moment. And then just looking at growing things within your space, even if you live in a small apartment, everyone can grow an herb garden. You can have an herb garden and grow at least that. And so at least you have this connection between a living thing. It's very therapeutic to do that, to see things grow and to partake with this experience of sharing with something that is natural. So that's always something that anybody can do no matter where they are. So looking into an in-house hydroponic system, or if you have a yard space, growing more of your own stuff, just so you're not so reliant on the stores. And then within buying food, it's it's recognition that every step we move away from that which is raw and natural is a degradation of sorts. So the grocery stores and how they pick things, it's always in their very unripe form. Sometimes they're sprayed with pesticides and whatever else, and so they're not they're not in the best, they're certainly not in the best quality. But if that's all we have access to, then just doing the best you can with what you have. So finding farmers markets is going to be your best bet if you can't grow like obviously best is going to be you growing it yourself. You know what's been done to the plant, you know what's been around it, you've loved it, you've cared for it. So that's going to be ideal. If you can't do that, then the next step would be a local farmers market, where you know the growers, you've seen it. It doesn't have to travel far. You can ask questions, and they know the answers of what's been used to how what the process is and how that's been grown. Next step down would be, finding there are definitely different qualities of grocery stores and how they put things out, and whether it's organic or not. Can make a difference. It's not an end all be all. I tend to go off the look and the feel and the smell of the fruit versus the organic labeling, because we can always wash things quite well, and that's another aspect of just always wash and bless your fruit. Always bless your food. It's such a wonderful way to add that vibration, speaking to it, showing that care to it, setting that intention around it helps to instill that. I mean, we are powerful. We are so powerful, and we have no idea just the extent of what we give off just based on our perspective, our mindset, our energy. So blessing the food when you receive it, when you wash it, is a great way to instill that care of it. Just asking the Mother Earth to, and thanking her for providing this nourishment to give it to us, and all those kind of things help to take away any of the residual nonsense that might have been sprayed on it or treated within that. And then washing the produce as well is a huge step. So there's several different methods one can use to sort of take away from the harmful effects of pesticides and whatever else. I don't think that people have a lot to fear with the pesticides getting into the food. And this is kind of a contrary to a lot of people's perspectives, and I think it's different for different foods. There are some foods that do absorb these toxins somewhat, but I'd say for the most part, the plants are very good. Because it's like how God created the system, which is, if this is a new concept for anybody, we're on a level plane, protected by the firmament. And so this firmament is impenetrable. And this is the same as our body is set up. Our body is not made to be penetrated. Injections and things of that nature are not good for us in any extent. So our body's built in this sort of very structured kind of way, the same as our earth is built, and the same as any plant is built as well. So any fruit that's going to have a natural protective barrier on the outside that's not going to be absorbing things that are just sprayed onto it. It's going to be naturally refining, distilling the water that comes through the plant, and ensuring that only the resources that it needs get into that item. So really, when you wash things, you're able to take off so much of that toxic layer, because it's not actually being absorbed into the fruit itself. Now, this might not be true for everything. I know things like spinach and some berries and other aspects, they might absorb. That it's kind of, it would require more testing to know that for sure, of how the length of what these pesticides and how much they get into these kind of foods. But at the very least, if you do spend a good diligence in washing these things properly, then you can effectively get most of the stuff out. So if you have my favorite method is just having a big tub of water and putting enough baking soda into it to where it's saturated. So I just pour enough in to where, I still see just a little bit at the bottom, but the water is saturated with that baking soda. And then I just let my fruit soak in that for at least 10, 15 minutes or so, sometimes longer if I feel like it really needs it. And the baking soda is such an alkalizing agent, and anything that causes harm to our bodies is typically very acidic. So these toxins and these poisons that they'll spray on stuff, they will be neutralized pretty effectively by the baking soda. And so this helps to cleanse, the water's cleansing it and the baking soda is neutralizing the poisons. And so then you just give a good rinse after that, and you're pretty good to go. If you want to add an extra layer of scrub to that, then add some spray. So you just pour the baking soda on without the water, and then pour on either lemon juice or vinegar. Lemon juice a little better, but vinegar, it works just fine as well. And this creates, it causes that foaming, creates a scrub, and you can really scrub, things clean very effectively. And then they also have, plenty of veggie and fruit scrubs and washes you can buy. Some I'm sure are better than others, but those are just ways that you can wash your fruit and very well. So that would be the thing, is just make sure you wash your fruit, bless your fruit, and then just do your best with it. And that, I know I had when I lived in cities or was around cities, I always loved doing orange juice. Orange juice is such a staple, and it has been for the past couple of years in my life. So going through lots of oranges, you're always looking for the best deals on oranges to cut cost. So I always found, when I was in cities, you can find wholesale produce places. So these are stores that don't usually have customer facing, but I never had problems with them selling me anything. So usually what these people will sell to grocery stores and restaurants and people who are buying in bulk. So they don't typically sell to customers in that way. But I never had a problem of just calling around and say, hey, do you guys have any cases of oranges? I'd love to buy a few. And then just buy a few cases. You do have to buy in bulk in these kind of ways. Sometimes they'll break cases, and you can buy other sorts of things as well. And so regardless of what I was eating, these would often be spaces where I'd get the bulk of definitely my oranges, but sometimes other things as well. Because if you're going to be buying from a grocery store, these are the places the grocery store buys from. So it's going to have already sat on the shelf there, and then sat on the shelf at the grocery store, and then sat out on display at the grocery store before you finally get to it. So this is just kind of cutting down on that time that fruit has been sitting there. So these are good options for saving cost and finding better quality stuff as well. So those would be some kind of city dwelling tips.
Cool. Thank you. Okay. Has anybody else got any questions?
Yeah, can I ask something?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, Justin, I wanted to ask you if you have ever worked with people who got those jabs that many people got recently, and had side effects or got injured because of them. And if you did, then did you have any success in helping those people recover? And that's one part of the question. And another part is, how do you see the future of humanity in general now that we have so many people jabbed with those experimental materials about which we don't know much about their long-term effects?
Sure. I don't have a lot of direct experiences with dealing with people who have experienced repercussions from those kinds of things. I had, a lot of people in my family take it, and I haven't heard of anybody having any major problems with them, but I do hear of other people knowing people who have had them. So I can't say that I have direct experience in helping people work through those kinds of things, but I will say that our body is miraculous. There is nothing that we can't heal. There's nothing that we can't address. Fasting is the fastest way to health. It does address everything. So this is going to be a really simple one-stop shop way of addressing any wide range of problems. Now, most people aren't really ready to go into fasting right away or whatever else. So then having transitional steps of looking to eat more fruit, being hydrated, and these kind of things, and then looking to introduce fasting is going to be a way to set that up. So, and regardless of what the injections might do, there's heavy metal detox is very prevalent in all of us. So just introducing any sort of protocol to addressing heavy metals, a really inexpensive and easy one to do is to just juice cilantro. You can take cilantro, make a little shot of juice from it. Take that, and then followed by some distilled water with activated charcoal in it. So the cilantro helps to drive out the heavy metals, and then the activated charcoal followed behind it maybe like 10, 15, 20 minutes behind it. You drink a glass of water with activated charcoal in it. And so this is going to help to draw those heavy metals out, and then the activated charcoal will bind to it and then push it through your system. So that would probably be effective at anything, any wide range of things that we might come across or encounter, including those. So it doesn't really change the approach on how you'd address anything like that. Anytime we have an ailment or anytime we're experiencing some sort of symptom or another, our body's detoxing. So just getting away from this idea that I'm experiencing symptoms because I'm sick, that I'm catching a cold or whatever else. No, you already had the toxicity within you to create that symptom, and your body's finally expressing it. Your body's finally getting it out. And so that's why we experience the symptoms of illness or whatever we like to term it. So it's a good thing to express. It's a good thing to have these moments where our body's expelling that to produce the mucus to get rid of it. So anything that we can do to encourage that process, not to be diluting it with pills or masking the symptoms with all these other sorts of things. And just helping to facilitate that process. And fasting is really the best way to do that, because if our body is, if you don't have to look far, but look in nature, anytime an animal is sick, what does it do? It fasts. It stops eating. Sometimes it stops drinking, and it just has that period where a body can truly address whatever the problem is. So if someone is experiencing, life-threatening ailments, this is often a huge motivating factor for them to go harder in these spaces of getting more dedicated in fasting and getting more dedicated in that. And it's, so everyone is experiencing exactly what they need to in every moment in order to bring them to that space of greatest health. And so if anyone's having a healing catastrophe, well, the body has gotten to that point where it's like it's dealt with everything that it could in those moments, and it needs to kick up the next part of the process and address it in a more drastic way. And we had the decision to either do it effectively or continue masking it, and then the problem just gets worse later on. So yeah, I mean, it would be the same for regardless of the ailment of what their approach would be.
Okay, thank you so much. And I also have another question which is unrelated to that. In your case, what was the first factor or the first thing that made you look at things differently and kind of consider that there are things beyond what many people believe to be life, in terms of food, in terms of philosophy, in terms of general viewpoint on life? What was the very first thing in your case that actually something clicked there?
Well, I often joke that the first conspiracy theory that I dipped into was when my parents, I was like 3 or 4 years old, and my parents tried to tell me that Santa Claus did all these different things and came down our chimney and all the kind of, the ways that, and I refused to let that go. I asked too many questions about it, and they got to the point where they were just so tired of answering these questions and lying about stuff that they eventually told me. And so that was the first kind of realization, like, oh, okay, so my reality is not always as it seems. There could be something missing here. But it really wasn't until I was 15 or so when I watched the documentary Loose Change, which just goes over all the inconsistencies with the 9/11 story and what we were told. And so I knew at that point that if they could deceive us to that level, if there were this many inconsistencies with the official narrative, then what else was deception? What else was not as it was intended to be? So that just continued onward with just my inquisitive nature. I don't really take just because as an answer to anything. I need to have an answer to something. If I can't find the answer, if people won't tell me the answer, then that's a suspicion that I'm like, okay, well, why don't these people know what this answer is? And I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to find out. And so that just progressed, until off and on, it wasn't like an obsession of mine until, I'd say my later 20s when, we had this just continued upheaval within how societal structure was going. And, I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with kind of Q and how that came about and what truth was being unveiled within that aspect. And so that gave me, I didn't really trust that at first, but it gave me a lot of encouragement that there was something out there that's causing us to question the narrative, causing us to lead us to these other questions, and stimulating this conversation in that sort of way. So that just led me down further down the path into questioning things and finding the answers behind things, and realizing that we don't really know anything at all, and everything we've been taught is a lie. Every single aspect we've been taught is based on a lie. So then when I finally came to that realization, and that was Charlie Freak that really put that all together in that sort of way, because I was still holding on to some aspects. But when I realized that every single aspect, not just some, but every single aspect was based on a lie, then it became much easier to put it all together and say, okay, they had to lie to us to this extent, because if we had any truth within our lives, we could find the discrepancies, because truth destroys lies. Any truth that we have, it eliminates the possibility for those lies to continue. So they couldn't allow any of us to have any semblance of truth on anything within our lives, because we would figure it out. We would be able to pick it apart and expose it all. So that just continued me down to this path today, where I found all this.
Wow, very inspiring, very inspiring. Okay, Karen, so over to you. Maybe anyone else has any questions?
Hi, good evening.
Hey.
I'm just interested in practical tips. I'm always learning for cleansing the blood vessels, kidneys. It's not very easy. Apparently, I don't know, it never ends, the detoxing. There's always more. And, I just like to hear from your experience, like practical tips for cleansing liver, intestines, blood, blood vessels, kidneys. Kidneys I find the hardest, and also blood vessels. Yeah. The mineralization, you can tell that the creaking sound that, it starts, calcification starts. So.
Yeah, great question. Yeah, no problem. It can be daunting when everything, as I mentioned, everything we've been taught is a lie, and this includes our health space. And so you even go try to find information about stuff, and you've got all these different people saying all these different things, and there's no consistency, and you don't know which way's up and who's telling what, and who's just going along with the corporations in the industry, and who's actually got the genuine idea around health in the right direction. So it can be overwhelming at times. And I'd say the one of my greatest teachers in that space of detoxing properly has truly been Dr. Morse, and his approach to addressing these pathways of elimination, and addressing these areas of our body that we have to make sure are eliminating properly if we want to detox effectively. Because as I mentioned earlier, if we just start to introduce detox and we're not eliminating as we need to, then it just ends up moving around to a different area and causing different problems. And it's very confusing in that regard. So you mentioned the kidneys. I mean, kidneys are probably the hardest area. I mean, they have been difficult for me to kind of get going at times. It still is a point where they're not necessarily eliminating as I'd like them to. Even bowel issues, that sometimes a struggle as well. So it's just that it's continually going back to fasting really being the best form of healing. It truly is. The more time that we give our body to address what it needs to, it does, and it goes in the order that it needs to go. It's very intuitive in how it processes things, but this is not something that's going to be handled within a 24-hour fast. This is something that we really need to be going longer periods of time in order to get to these deeper areas. Because if it's just for a short stint, your body's only going to address certain layers of it, and then we go back to eating, and then those layers get covered up again, and then the next time we go on a short fast, it's still only going to address those sort of surface level areas. So to go into the depths of it, I think long-term fasting is the most effective way, and it's not always feasible for people given life circumstances and people not be, because you do have to take time off in order to go on a longer fast. Like, this is not always feasible. Sometimes people need to be making money or whatever else, and society's designed around that. It's designed to keep us away from these tools of health so that we're always stuck in this rat race and we're never able to address things properly. So if you're able to go on a longer fast, I think a lot of those areas can be addressed quite effectively. You talk about like a 21-day or even longer, and you're really getting into these deeper layers of and addressing and healing things that your body's never had time to be able to do before. So that's probably the fastest way to address any of these things. But you can also strategically kind of go about it with how Dr. Morse goes about it with fruits and herbs. So those are his biggest things. I mean, he talks about fasting some as well, but really going on fruit cleanses with herbal remedies to kind of help target particular areas of the body. So he's got, I don't promote just his stuff, but he does have some pretty good formulas, herbal tinctures and things of that nature that I've used and I've found success in using them. You can just find the ingredients list, and he encourages people to do this too if they can't afford the tinctures. I mean, they're not crazy expensive. It's usually around like $25 for a tincture that's 2 weeks. So about $50 a month for a month-long supply of a particular tincture. But he does encourage people to just look at the ingredients list, find the herbs within those, and you can go source them yourself. You can either go make a tea with the certain herbs, or you can find them in capsule form or things of that nature. I think tincture is probably the most effective way of just getting it into the body and having it be effective in that sort of way. So you could look into making tinctures yourself or going that route. But herbal remedies, herbs are such a powerful tool for us to use to really target certain areas of the body. So if I want to get my kidneys going, then using herbs to really stimulate that effect and maximizing that. Now, these herbs are not going to be as effective if we're still eating everything else. If we're still eating lots of cooked foods, if we're still eating lots of high fat foods. So high fat foods are always going to slow down detox. So the water rich, hydrating fruits are going to be the best food to not necessarily have to be fasting, but you're still in such an eased state of being that your body is going to be able to address whatever else and allow those herbs to effectively target those particular areas of the body. So that's what he always recommends, is just going on an extended, grape fast where you're just eating grapes. And in that time, you're taking herbal tinctures to target whatever area of the body. So those are often effective at doing that in that way. So that's a choice. So I still think that an extended fast is going to be the absolute best way to address it. It doesn't cost anything, but it does take time and it takes a lot of effort. So sometimes this is not feasible for people. So if you want to go the route of fruits and herbs, that's also quite effective as well to do so. So those would be some sort of practical tips to utilize. Also looking at your skin as a pathway of elimination too. So I've really enjoyed Tyler Tolman, his YouTube channel. His father, Don Tolman, is like such a pioneer in the fasting space. I'm sure many of you are aware, but if you haven't listened to his podcast, Where Health Lies, it's phenomenal. It's so good. And he has healed so many people through fasting, and he's a legend. Like he's truly a legend in that space. And his son, Tyler Tolman, is also just an incredible man. And Tyler has all of these wonderful videos on his channel that go over fasting and effective ways to do it. He has a fasting retreat. I'm not sure exactly where it is, but that would be one that I'd consider if I did want to go on a fasting retreat. And that would be something too, if money is no object, looking into someone like Tyler Tolman or Lauren Lockman and their fasting retreats, they're expensive, so that's not always feasible. But to have a space where you can dedicate that time with people who are trained and they know what they're doing and they can guide you through and out of the fast in an effective way can really give a beautiful reset that you might need in order to address these particular areas. So that's always a method as well. But the reason I brought up Tyler Tolman was to talk about skin cleansing as well. He talks about this method called gouaching, which is you take vodka and baking soda and don't drink it. And I'm not saying to drink the vodka, but the vodka was actually made as a skin product before people started to drink it. So he takes a mixture of vodka and baking soda, and he really scrubs his skin with it. And this helps to the alcohol helps to open up the pores, and the baking soda helps to neutralize any acids within it. And then it really just activates the skin in this sort of way, to allow that pathway of elimination to work effectively. So that's one way. Dry brushing is another really beautifully powerful way to have that pathway opened up. So dry brushing is a great effective method of just doing that before you take a shower, to just open up your skin in these sorts of ways. So those would be some more kind of helpful tips in that regard. But just yeah, I mean, it's usually about the same for everything. Just cutting out the toxins is first and foremost. Like, we cannot be continuing to eat toxic things if we want to be detoxing. So if we just keep adding to the toxins, to the toxic layers, then we're never going to address the problem. So that has to be the first and foremost step is taken, is to stop consuming the toxic stuff. And then you can work on effectively eliminating the residual stuff that's within the body, but also trusting that it takes time. There's no, like I said, fasting is the fastest way to healing. Extended fasting is going to be the most effective way to address these kind of areas. But without that, and even with that, it still takes time to really work through all these layers. We have to consider that we've spent our whole lives eating these ways that have added all these layers to us. And in order to truly effectively get rid of all those, it does take time to address. It takes time to effectively get rid of them. And so you're talking about a years long process. So it's good to be gentle with ourselves. It's good to just honor the process for what it is, knowing that it's going to come in different phases. Sometimes I might feel better than others, and that's okay, but just truly trusting that this is the space that we're getting to, and trusting how it's going to go, is really helpful to just maintain that mental fortitude in those moments where it might seem really intense, where it might seem really hard, and I don't know what to do, and I don't know what to do next. It's like, okay, well, I'm just trusting I am where I need to be. I'm trusting I'm going where I need to go, and just trusting everything that happens because of it.
Yeah, I realize it's a process. It seems like it's never going to end. Like, I've been for the last 2 years, more than that, a raw vegan with slips. Now I can say that I'm 100% raw vegan, but I still need to eliminate like tahini or the dense butters. It's raw, but it's very dense. It's not natural. You need the heaviness, you need the oiliness, but it's, even though it's raw, it's still, I know. So I'm trying to cut off from that. Also, I'm doing intermittent fasting and weekly fasting. Yes, 24 hours, but still it's not enough. Just like you were saying, it's years, decades of accumulating toxins. So that's so it's got to take years and even decades to, you've got to be patient. And I'm always progressing. There's no looking back, and I'm doing it gradually. I think Laurie spoke about, you can't jump from one extreme to the other. Otherwise you just lose it. It has to be gradual, and once you decide on something, then there's no going back. Like, that's why it has to be gradual. Otherwise you wouldn't be able to do it. So all right, so thank you.
Great point. Just to add to that, I mean, you talk about sustainability and ensuring everything that we do is sustainable, and that's so important, just to ensure that sustainability is truly integrated, so we're not skipping steps, we're not jumping into one space or another. And then yes, the overt fats is a great thing to consider as well. If we do want to focus on really detoxing any type of overt fat, the nuts and seeds and even avocados and coconuts and things of that nature, they are going to slow down the detox process. So while they are absolutely delicious, and I don't want to scare anybody away from, if you need that as a tool to transition away from other things,
Yeah.
then they're beautiful. But when we really want to get into detox, so if you really wanted to maximize the effectiveness of herbs and things of that nature, then yeah, cutting out the overt fats is really going to help to have that time to where, because even just looking at from a blood vessel level, anytime we eat overt fats of any type, it causes everything to slow down. Everything gets really slow, and so this just inhibits that detox. So it is really important to consider. So good point.
Even olive oil.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Yep.
But so also I understand onion is also not good, and garlic, because it forms mucus. So you have to have your salad without onions, without oils. Okay.
Yeah, it's
lemon,
tough.
Just lemon.
Yeah, it's tough. What I found with salads and reducing the oils, it's just making a blend of veggie fruits and things of that nature. So if you want to blend up a bunch of like tomatoes, and like a really good blend is tomato mango. Just those two together is phenomenal. Like it's such a good dressing. And then you're staying away from the overt fats, and with onions, you're if you still want to have that flavor and less of the alum kind of effect, look into chives. Chives is going to be a much gentler form of that same flavor, without as much of the sort of damaging. So it kind of goes in order of, chives, and then green onions, and then probably red onions, and then all the rest, as far as the impact on us. But chives is going to be a much gentler form of that. That's still going to have that similar kind of taste to it, as a transitional tool to get away from it. So just a suggestion there.
What do you say about carrots and radish? Is that okay, or is that too much minerals to have in the salad?
Well, that's the different schools of thought. You look at Dr. Sebi, and he says that carrots, I think radishes too, are both hybridized forms of food, and they don't absorb minerals very well. And then you look at other people that say carrots are, some of the best things ever. A lot of people kind of agree that, well, radishes, I don't know. I don't particularly like radishes that much, so I don't mind cutting them out. But carrots I'll still have occasionally. I think that sort of denser vegetables can be harder to digest. And so this can add a little bit more strain to our body when we eat them in that form. So I don't know. The jury's still out on those kind of things. I just kind of intuitively go where I need to go in those moments. And I'm not eating carrots right now, but I wouldn't be opposed to it too much either. Just kind of a thing. I play it by ear.
Pepper, or what would be the ideal salad like?
Yeah. So I made a delicious salad yesterday, and I chopped up, I had some green leaf lettuce. I had some red bell pepper. I had tomatoes, and then a bunch of cilantro, some parsley, and then to make the sauce, I blended up more of the tomatoes. I added some avocado to the sauce, and then I had added some orange juice that I had from earlier in the day to kind of make a blend with that. And then I added a little bit of sea salt as well, which salt is another thing which like I would love to get away from. It's very addictive, but it's, it doesn't really, I don't feel like it really helps me. Yeah, I don't feel like it's serving me in any way. There are different schools of thought on types of salt. The Celtic sea salt seems to be the best form of it, but it still ultimately doesn't seem to be helping us. It's dehydrating and doesn't help in the long term. So I ideally like to avoid that as well. But I'm still, transitioning away from that also. So that was my salad last night.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
So we're coming up to, I think it's just over 2 hours now. Has anybody else got any questions?
I got a quick question just to see what you would say about when the fruits and vegetables in the stores. I don't know if it depends which store, but I've heard said that, they're not really organic, even though they say they're organic. Is that true? And do you know which stores, or do you know, how can you know?
Well, we've got to
If it
look
is or
at
not.
we've got to look at the term organic and what does that really mean to us? Organic really should just be grown naturally from the mother
Okay, no pesticides.
Yeah, without any sort of man coming in and changing things. So, but I mean, then you'll see things like organic seedless watermelons. And it's like God doesn't make things that are seedless. So that how can that be organic? That didn't come from nature in that kind of way. I'm not saying that eating that was going to harm you in any sort of way. I don't think it will harm us, but it's probably not bringing us into that space of highest potential if we're going to be eating things like that. Ultimately, the least amount of interference and touching from the hands of man is going to be best for us. So it's hard to distinguish. Organic just means largely it's just a label. It's just something they've met some requirements in order to get that labeling. And usually it is better than non-organic typically, but it doesn't mean that it hasn't been sprayed. It's just been sprayed with organically labeled pesticides, which doesn't really make any sense to me either, but so it's not an end all be all to just say all organic to me. There's so many more layers to it. Not to scare anybody or, because oftentimes we're limited, especially in cities and things of that nature. So we just do the best we can with everything always. And that's the wonderful thing about this creation is God knows when we're doing the best we can, and it's very rewarded in that sense too. It's all about us. It's not about comparing ourselves to anybody else and saying, oh, I wish I could do that.
Yeah, you would wash the organic or the like the conventional, as they call it, and you're saying that you're saying that you would buy the conventional and not like it's kind of doesn't matter what you buy. I'm not sure if I understand a little bit.
It's case by case, So if I'm looking at the organic versus the inorganic, whatever, the conventional in the store and the organic looks just less appealing. If I go by appearance a lot of times too, and also keeping in mind the sort of waxy sprays and stuff they put on stuff to make it seem like it looks better. So always being aware of all the factors that go into that kind of stuff. But I don't limit myself off the organic labeling because I'm going to wash it and I'm going to be taking off any sort of layer that's on that fruit in general. And regardless if it's organic or conventional. So I don't put a ton of weight on it. If I had the choice and they looked exactly the same and money was no object, then yeah, I'm going to get the organic every time, just because that's one more likelihood that it is going to be a little better than the conventional. But there are so many other factors to consider in that moment. So I don't box myself in.
Oh, great. Thanks. It's good to know, because obviously we spend a lot more money on organic, and I usually buy organic thinking that it is optimal compared to the other. But
I mean, I think typically it would be, but I'm just saying that some people get into this mindset that they can't ever eat conventional. And I like to take a look at everything and really shop around and see where the best quality stuff. I mean, sometimes you'll find farmers markets where they don't label it organic, but they're still going to be so much better quality than going to a grocery store where it's labeled organic. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. I like the farmers markets, and even if they say they're not organic, as long as they tell me they're not sprayed with pesticides, Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. So Justin, I was going to ask you just to talk briefly about just about the awakening and your understanding, just briefly, so that the group can get a feel for what you're so passionate about with the inversion and awakening that is happening right now. So if you just share that just to wind us up tonight, please.
Sure. Yeah. So as I kind of mentioned at the beginning of the show, you know, everything is a lie and it's all been designed to disconnect us away from who we are and what we're here to do. Disconnect us from each other, disconnect us from source, you know, disconnect us from ourselves. So anytime that we can bring and stimulate that connection is going to be the greatest act of rebellion against the system that's designed to disconnect us. And so that's been my passion, is to finding ways to stimulate that connection, but also through that, really discovering that there are, you know, while we can see the repercussions of that which is evil in our world, you know, it's very clear to see where the problems are, what sort of you know, aspects are not conducive to people as a whole, where people are not cared for, and it causes a lot of problems. This only happens because evil does exist, but the way that God creates everything is always in balance. So for that much evil to exist, there has to be that much good also. And that much good is not necessarily as apparent right now until you really start looking, until you really can see it at a deeper level. So this is where this awakening kind of aspect comes from, this great awakening that we're going through, and starting to see that so much, while there has been so much evil going on behind the scenes that's kind of steered us into this direction, there has also been that much good that's also existed, who's helping to right the ship and bring us back into the space of balance and recognizing and taking ownership of this realm that we exist in. So that's been my passion, is continuing to support that, you know, in any way that I can. But ultimately the greatest goal of this realization is not to continue, it's not to give our power away to anybody else that's, you know, going to come along and be our savior. It's about recognizing that we are the ones we've been waiting for. The Great Awakening is about us finding ourselves once again. So there are absolutely good people behind the scenes that are structuring this experience in a way that is stimulating that response in people. And it might be hard to wrap around a lot of the reasons why things have had to be done in certain ways, but ultimately it has been for our greatest benefit. So you look at, you know, Joe Biden as an example, this character that's up there on stage. It doesn't take very long to look and you find older pictures of this man, Joe Biden, and who is up there on stage today. That's not the same guy. It's not the same man. This is a different character entirely. And this is just one example of many of where the stage has been set to show us just the depth of how far we'd fallen. So the old Joe Biden was very much responsible for a lot of calamity and hardship that we faced. He very much was a part of this sort of satanic structure that was taking us into deeper, darker pits of hell. And he's been taken care of. He's gone away with. And so the man that has been replaced with that is an actor in a mask who's up there demonstrating to all of us what it means to give away our power. So we're experiencing just a small taste of what it means to give away our power to somebody who had nothing but bad intentions for us. Because we can't just be told the truth about everything. We can't just come out, they can't just come out and say, hey, you've been lied to about everything, and here's the truth. That doesn't work, because people reject that, as we know. You know, anytime you try and introduce that to anybody, people reject it. So you can't tell the people, you must show them. We must see the experiences firsthand. We must see these experiences and how we go through them in order to come out of this funk that we've been in, to where we were so constantly willing to give our power away to anybody who was dangling some sort of shiny object in front of us and saying, here, making these promises. You know, all these politicians throughout our whole experiences have just been making these nonsense promises that are just full of nothing. You know, they just empty promises. So this is us coming back to this realization that we need to stop giving our power away. We need to stop giving it so willingly away, and also preparing us for this sort of grand grand event, which is going to be the final shift, where everything does become apparent, where everything that was hidden comes to light. This is the revelation. This is the time that we're going through right now, where it's not the end of times, it's the end of their time. It's the end of the time of the controllers, the time where we didn't have access to who we are, and we didn't have access to our independence and just get to live and be as we are. So everything within this experience is stimulating that awakening within us. And as we continue going down and going through this, it does become more apparent as we start to see these conversations of groups like yourselves start to become more commonplace. Whereas before, if these kind of conversations were happening, it was very systemic on shutting it down and wiping us out, killing people left and right who were starting to speak up and announce their sovereignty and try and disconnect from the system in any way, whether this is the health space or in moving out of the cities or any sort of semblance of that. The system was designed to stop that. The system was designed to break that spirit of freedom. But that system is gone. That system is over with. So now it's just the final stages of this military operation. That's what it's been. It has been a military operation. Our world had fallen into the grips of this satanic structure. And so the military did have to step in and take care of what needs to be done. But we can't just have the military be our savior and expect that to deal with everything. So they recognize that this is a complicated psychological operation where we do have to see and experience in some small degrees some of the effects of what this evil was bringing us into, so that we finally make this step and say, I'm never giving my power away ever again. I'm never going to do that. And so everything that we're experiencing now is bringing us to this space of realization, so that these kind of conversations can continue to happen, so that we can continue finding this resolve and this power within. So it is exciting to see it unfold, and it's exciting to continue to revisit these topics in ways to where we can find ourselves once again and continue simulating that connection with the divine, knowing that we are children of God, and there's nothing that can ever take that away from us. So that's kind of a quick summary of what my focus is on. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And yeah, really appreciate you joining us today. And I'll hand it back over to Arik, who will wind things up.
Okay, Justin. So first of all, thank you so much. It was inspiring. It was informative, uplifting, heartwarming, like many good things I have to tell you about your webinar. Now, tell us a little bit about your services, because we have lots of people from all over the world, and if they want to contact you to get to know you better, or maybe to get some coaching, like what kind of services do you provide, especially online still, since we have lots of people from not from the States?
Yeah. And I pretty much exclusively do everything online. I like to embody kind of getting away from this system where we charge for everything. I don't charge for anything that I do. Everything that I do is free of charge. But I am willing to engage with people on a more personal, individual level if that's something that people want to do. But all that I ask in that space is like, let's create this connection, and then let's offer something in exchange for this energetic exchange that we're participating in. So if I'm offering my time, then all I would ask is that somebody offer something in equal value, whether that's money or it could be something else different. I like people being creative as far as offering me something else. I've had people offer me like a human design reading or a Reiki session or whatever else as something to offer in exchange for the time given.
Wow,
so
that's beautiful.
as long as we do that kind of stuff, then we can always be honoring these exchanges in ways to where we're all being uplifted, we're all growing, and no one's being left out. No one has, because we've got to get away from this debt-based usury system where everything is charged for and everything is just has a cost tied to it. I want to get into the space where we're all sovereigns, recognizing the value that we all provide, and we can bring this space forward. So I know the value that I provide because I've done a lot of work, and I have a lot of experience, and I have a lot to offer within that space. So I'm very willing to engage with people at that level. But I would just love to see some reciprocation of some degree or another. It doesn't, like I said, it doesn't have to be money, but money's an easy one for people to go for. So if that's something that interests you, then you can always get in contact with me. You can go to my website, justincarpenter.org. That's an easy space. You can find the connect link there, or you can go find me on Telegram as well. If you just want to go directly to me, my tag in Telegram is at Justin Carpenter, all one word. That's at Justin Carpenter, all one word. My channel on there is at Justin Carpenter 33. That's my channel where I do most of my postings, and I post all my stuff. There are a couple other places, like I'm on Facebook if you can find me there. So there are many ways that you can contact me. I love connecting with people, and even if it's not for a session or anything like that, and you just have a general question about different things, I don't mind answering simple questions and easy things, or directing people towards resources or content that I've put out there. I've put out a lot of stuff on my website. I've put out a lot of stuff on Telegram. I'm kind of all over the place in different areas too. So I don't mind helping people find, but I love helping people that love to help themselves. Like I don't want to sit there and guide you through every aspect. But if people have certain questions and have challenges and are finding something or other, then I'm more than happy to help. So don't hesitate to reach out and those kind of things. And if you want to connect at a deeper level and have a session or something like that, then yeah, let's talk, and we can come up with some sort of deal where we each offer something in exchange, and we can make something happen. But I don't like being rigid and how that's structured. I like really just having that connection point, and then opening up that conversation and going from there. So always available for that kind of stuff. So feel free to reach out for that as well.
That's wonderful. Justin, and which areas of life would you like to help people with? Or what kind of issues can people approach you with so that you are most skillful in helping them solve?
Yeah, a good question. I don't really have a limited area. I know a lot about or I know a little about a lot of things. But my focus is on holistic. So I like to find the areas within an individual's life where they might find the best improvement, and then to help them unlock those areas. So it's not me addressing anything. It's just inspiring the individual to find those areas within themselves. So this could be anything from emotional blockages to physical aspects. We talked a lot about health today. I don't mind answering those kind of things, but the emotional areas or the spiritual areas, like those I really do feel a lot of inspiration in helping people find those areas, because I've been able to unlock and uncover a lot of stuff with myself. So just general coaching, I'm always happy to help. And so whatever area you find most useful, I certainly can go into. And I'd say I'd just suggest to anybody before approaching is just go through some of my stuff, see some of the talks that I've had with other people. I do a lot of stuff, just open, engaging Q&As, as I mentioned, on my Telegram channel. So it's very much like this kind of forum where people can just come to me and ask me all sorts of different things. So there's a lot of good examples out there as far as what we've gone through, and just dealing with these sort of challenges, because these times are challenging. There's no getting around it. This is a difficult time for so many, for a wide variety of reasons. And so we don't have to go through these things alone, and so I love engaging with different people and going through these different areas and finding ways to best support them. But ultimately, it's just inspiring the individual to find that power within. If I don't leave them with that sense, that I'm failing to some degree. I don't want anybody to look to me as a savior, look to me as somebody to rely upon. That's where a lot of like counselors and therapists and whatever else they're just trying to build clients. They're just trying to have a consistent somebody to talk to. I don't want somebody to have to come back and see me. I'd love to address a whole wide variety of issues and to work myself out of a job every single time. I think that's the inspiring space to be in, is to, we're not giving, we're teaching fishers of men, which is teaching people how to fish, which is an allegory for just to have this sense of inspiration within, so that they can find themselves once again. So that's my area of expertise, if you could call it that. It's just I see the highest expression of every individual. I truly do. And I love guiding people towards that reality. I love helping people to see that.
Amazing, amazing, Justin. And can you, if someone approaches you, can you also teach them certain self-healing modalities or certain techniques of working with their mind or with their emotions so that they can actually apply them on a daily basis?
Absolutely. Yeah. Just practical experiences on dealing with instances of communicating in those kind of areas and modalities. You know, I have limited experience, but I know a lot of people and I know a lot of presentations where I can direct and guide people towards as well. So I love being a connector. So if I don't have an answer, I'll find somebody or direct you towards somebody that does. And if I truly don't know, I don't mind admitting that I don't know. You know, I think a lot of people get into this idea that thinking they have to pretend like they know things, and I know some things, but there's some things that I don't know, and I don't mind acknowledging that, you know, just being humble and everything that I do.
Okay, okay, thank you so much. So Justin, we are going to put your contact details below this video for our members and other people. It's going to be on YouTube, so many people who are not in our group will watch it as well. So if people want to contact you, they can do that. And I just want to finish with 2 feedbacks that we got in the chat. So thank you very much for such an inspiring session. And then another woman says, thank you all. This was amazing, beneficial, and extremely helpful. Yeah,
Awesome.
I agree. I agree.
Amazing.
Okay,
it was a pleasure being here. Thank you all for the kind notes and kind comments. You guys are amazing. You're truly inspiring to be amidst a group of people that are willing to embark upon this level of you know, just coming back to themselves again, just truly seeing yourselves for how bright you shine and shining even brighter.
Thank you so much, Justin. Okay, thank you, Justin. Thank you, Karen, for
Thank you.
hosting Justin. It was wonderful. It was a very successful event, in my opinion. And okay, and thank you guys for everyone for coming. So, guys, all the blessings to you. And yeah, and take care. Have a blessed day.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye. Thank you, Justin. Bye bye, everyone. Bye.